He's not coming. No, he's not. Yeah. Okay. I think we are up and running. Let me just check. I apologize for the technical problems here. Rachel, I'm letting you talk. Can you just say hi to us to make sure you can see us? Rachel.
Yes, everything looks good.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. Okay, Mr. Chair, if you want to go ahead and call the meeting to order. I think we can go as I'm working out the other issues here.
Okay. Thank you, Bob. We apologize to everyone viewing at home. We had a little bit of a technical difficulty. So we are calling this meeting of the Providence City Plan Commission to order. It is 5:02 p.m. on Tuesday, June 21st. Let's start by taking a roll call.
Noel Sanchez.
Nicole Verdi.
Harry Bilodeau.
Choyan Mandrakar, DPD staff.
And I am Michael Gazdaco, chair. And we also have Bob Azar, who's also staff.
Thank you.
With Kelly Morris Salvatore as well here. Let's talk about the meetings. We have a couple of meeting minutes to approve. Has everyone received them, read them for accuracy? Any motions to approve? Let's start with the April 12th, or we could do all three together. We have minutes from April 12th meeting, April 19th meeting, and May 17th meetings.
Seeing no edits, I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion by Nicole. Do we have a second? We have a second by Noel. Thank you very much. Let's just take a quick yay or nay. All in favor of approving the minutes from the 12th, the 19th of April, and May 17th, say aye.
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 All right. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, the meetings pass. Director's report. Are you in a position?
Yeah, I'll give it a shot. Thank you for your patience. My computer decided to just completely cut out, and I had to go for somebody else's computer from upstairs. So this is what it's like trying to run a hybrid meeting. Just so everybody knows, you're not just trying to deal with what happens in the room, but you're also you have to be a technical expert as well. Anyway, what I did want to talk to you about, a couple things. We are doing kind of a slow rollout of our comprehensive plan process. We are continuing to discuss internally what our process is going to be. We are already starting to make the rounds of neighborhood organizations to talk a little bit about what the comprehensive plan is and what we envision as we move forward with the process of amending it. And we are going to be reaching out to elected officials as well and to other city departments. And I expect to be updating you on a regular basis as to the status and also obviously including you in the dialogue and the formulation of the comprehensive plan. So stay tuned for that. Meanwhile, every so often since 2014, when we adopted the zoning ordinance, we have come to you and to the city council with a series of edits. Typically, these are technical changes and tweaks that help clarify the ordinance. And these are things that that have come to our attention over the years, over the months of day in and day out working with the zoning ordinance, things that aren't exactly clear, to paraphrase the Buffalo Springfield. When someone comes to you with a particular situation, sometimes you think you know what the ordinance says, but sometimes it turns out that it's a little ambiguous. So we're looking to do a lot of clarification. There are also a couple of things that we would consider to be policy changes. I'm going to hand out a copy of this proposed ordinance with a little table in a minute. We're also going to post it online so that everybody can see what we're talking about. We're not going to bring it back to you for discussion until the meeting in July. So we'll give you a little bit of time to talk about it. But I just want to mention there are three policy changes that we want to bring forth. One of them relates to cannabis because the state has just passed legislation legalizing recreational retail sales of recreational cannabis. So we want to be ahead of the curve and we want to adjust our ordinance to address retail sales of cannabis. Our proposal right now is to allow for retail sales in the same places we allow for compassion centers and cultivation centers. So it would be more or less status quo. My understanding of the state legislation is that because we already accommodate compassion centers in Providence, we are obligated to also accommodate recreational retail sales. Other towns that do not have compassion centers can have a referendum as to whether they want to do this or not. We don't have that choice. So that's one change. The other two changes relate to housing and to the housing strategy that we developed in the past year or so. One of those is to adjust the regulations of our R4 zone. You'll know, having seen a bunch of zoning changes in the past several years, where developers want to build multifamily housing at high density and often with reduced parking. And the only way they can do that through a zoning change is a change to a commercial zone with a footnote that says only residential allowed. It's an imperfect way to get a truly multifamily zone. So we're proposing to adjust the regulations for the R4 zone in order that can be a much more versatile use to achieve higher housing density when allowed by the city council. The other one is a little bit more nuanced and complicated, but you may be aware that we have a provision in our zoning ordinance that says that if there are undersized lots that are contiguous, and if they're small enough and owned by the same party, they're considered merged for purposes of zoning. They exist as separate lots on the plat map. And the only way you would know that they're actually merged is if you found section 203 of the zoning ordinance and followed the rules there. This provision creates a lot of problems for the city. People sell these lots without knowing that they're merged. You have terrible problems when people come in to try to pull a building permit and they're informed by the city that they can't get a building. Not only can't they get a building permit, but the sale, when they bought their lot a couple of years ago from somebody, it turns out that it's null and void. And not only that, sometimes these lots go to tax sale and the city ends up selling tax liens on lots that shouldn't have been in separate ownership in the first place because of this provision in zoning. Our solution is to eliminate this provision so these lots aren't merged. What it would mean is that we'll have a lot more very small lots that could be developed for single family houses. That's good in terms of housing production, but we're also a little concerned about the scale of houses that could be built on very small lots. So we're also including a provision that would limit the height of new buildings on very small lots so that the scale isn't overwhelming for these new developments. So I'm going to let that sit out there for a little while. I'm going to pass out these zoning changes. We'll post them online tomorrow so that folks can see what they are, and then we'll be back in touch with you in July to review these. Okay, so I'm just gonna hand these out. There are
So would that automatically repeal the merging, the paper merging process, if it were passed?
that's correct.
Okay.
Yep. So let's see, that didn't sample properly.
So
Five.
how's that gonna affect, from a tax point of view, if you have a merged lot, you're gonna suddenly get two tax bills?
You already get two tax bills. That's the confusion of it. They're not merged for assessors purposes. They're not merged on the tax map.
Okay.
They're merged only by operation of law in accordance with the zoning
Oh, all
ordinance.
right, okay. So
Okay,
it's really clearing up,
it would be, yes.
yeah, good.
Okay, if you wouldn't mind passing those around, and then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 here, and then I gave you, didn't I give you 6? You can take another one. You need it. Okay. All right, so that's my report for now.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Then we will go in, if no one has questions for Bob about that, for the time being, we'll head right into the meeting. And we'll go right into the first agenda item. Number 1 is 659 to 663 Admiral Street and 22 Gloucester Street. This item was noticed, but it's not going to be heard. I don't know if we want to say anything about that.
Yeah, I could just mention that the notice was faulty on this. So we informed the applicant that this would have to wait until another meeting. So it doesn't, it's going to need to be re-noticed, so you don't need to continue it. But we just wanted to make sure that folks who did get notice, and if they showed up or if they're online, they know that this item, Admiral Street and Gloucester Street, will not be heard tonight.
Perfect.
And then, Mr. Chair, if I may,
Absolutely.
item number 6, the referral for 440 and 460 Rochambeau.
Mhm.
This is the petition by, I'm sorry, the ordinance amendment introduced by Councilwoman Anthony that would put this large estate into the historic district. That was supposed to come back to you this month. Councilwoman Anthony sent a message requesting that this be continued. Again, it doesn't need to be continued to a date certain, but whenever she wants it to come back to you, we'll accommodate her.
Do we need to take action on that?
You
Take a vote?
should take a vote to continue it.
So let's take this one out of order. So the number 1, agenda item number 1, again, if you're here for that, it will not be heard. It will be renoticed for another meeting. We don't need to take any action on that. But let's move out of order and take up city council referral, agenda item number 6, referral number 3511, 440 and 460 Rochambeau. We're looking for a motion to continue on that.
Motion to continue.
All right, we have a motion. We have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? All right, the motion is, this agenda item is continued. Now we'll go back in order and we'll head back to agenda item number 2, which is a city council referral as well. Referral number 3520 for 635 Hope Street. The petitioner is Russell Broccoli. And Troyan, you want to tee this one up for us?
Sure, Commissioners, and a quick introduction before we hear from the petitioner. This is a request to rezone the subject lot from R2 to RP. And this residence in the R2 zone is currently used as a home occupation for a chiropractic practice, I believe, where the applicant practices and also lives on the premises. And this zone change is being requested in order to allow the use to continue, but also allow the applicant the ability to live elsewhere if necessary. And that would be allowed by right with the zone change to RP. So I guess the petitioner can tell us more about the change and why it's being requested.
Okay, we have Nick. On behalf of the applicant.
Good evening, Attorney Nicholas Heeman for the applicant. Joyanne, I think, said it about as easily as it can be said. Dr. Broccoli has owned this property for a number of years. He's operated his chiropractic office out of there. He is scaling down his practice and was taking on a new person to run the office. And as they were trying to finance the transaction, the bank threw up a red flag. If you can't hear, I have a miserable sick child running around outside, so I
I was going to
apologize.
say, this sounds like my house right now.
Yeah, he's in rough shape. But anyway, so they couldn't finance it. The bank wouldn't close the loan because they didn't like the zoning, and so we proposed this zone change. It just reflects the historical use of the property. That part of Hope Street obviously is a residential area, but it's just around the corner from other light commercial uses. And that's why we came forward with this zone change.
And this, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's next door to a church and like almost across the street from a liquor store, a pharmacy, correct?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Any questions for?
I just had a
applicant.
question about, I just don't know, does RP recommend that a building be residential, be owner occupied or not?
I can speak to that. So in the residential professional zone, you're allowed to have professional offices, but those professional offices don't require owner occupancy.
Okay.
In the R3 zone, you can have professional offices as a home occupation. And a home occupation does require owner occupancy. So this is a professional office what the owner would like to do is to maintain a professional office in this building, but not to have the requirement that the building be owner occupied.
Right.
And
It affects the,
go ahead.
for our purposes, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. They couldn't get a commercial loan to do some of the upgrades to the facility because of the fact that it was classified as a home occupation. So that was really what the genesis of it was. Now, the use may or may not remain the same. His partner may continue to live there, but he couldn't get a commercial loan because of the status as home occupation.
And there are no current plans to change the structure that's there, only to make upgrades to the business, right?
Correct. There's no demolition. We're not going to build a medical 5-story medical office building or anything like that. It's just to operate within the existing footprint and the same building.
Thank you. Commissioners, any other questions for the applicant? Okay. Again, this is a referral. The city council will be taking this up, but they're looking for us to opine on this and see if it matches with our zoning and the comprehensive plan specifically. Obviously, it's a zone change, so it doesn't match with the zoning right now. Any thoughts?
Just one thing, I'm just interested in trying to keep as much of the middle class in Providence as possible, and I'm a little nervous about this. So if this became residential professional and someone did decide to move into it and live there, then they could apply for the homestead allowance still?
Yes.
It's not restricted or, all right,
No.
okay. I just want to keep that.
The zone simply is slightly more permissive than R3. The building could be used, I'm sorry, R2. The building could be used as a 2-family house. It could be used as an owner occupied house with a professional office in it as a home occupation, in which case the owner would be eligible for the homestead exemption. In fact, with a home occupation, it's not even taxed as a business property.
Okay. No, thank you. I just don't want to, I want to just keep as much of the middle class here as I can. That's all.
Okay.
That's all. Thank you.
I guess with that, we'd be looking for a motion for
And
the city council. Did you?
I
go
just
ahead.
want to say, just for the record, based on our recommendation, we recommend that you make a positive recommendation to the city council, mainly because of conformance with the comprehensive plan, given that this area is intended for low-density residential where small-scale commercial uses like this are frequently seen. And given the current use and minimal amount of change, we don't affect it to affect section 101 of the zoning ordinance. So based on that, we recommend that you make a positive recommendation to council.
And seeing as this is a public meeting, I don't see anyone raising their hands, but I want to give the opportunity for public input. Is there anyone in the room who wants to speak on this matter, or anyone in the virtual room who would like to say anything about the proposal in front of us, the city council referral? Please raise your digital hand or press *9 if you're calling in. And seeing none, we will close the public comment portion of this item, and we've just read the staff report. So now we'll be looking for a motion.
Make a motion to issue a positive recommendation based on the staff report and what we heard today.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll-
I think Christian Potter did. All right, so we have a second by Christian. Let's go around and Noel? Aye. Nicole?
Aye.
Harrison?
Aye.
Christian?
Aye.
And I vote aye. The matter carries.
Thank you.
Now, we will move on to agenda item number 3, which is also a city council referral. Referral 3521 downtown parking structures. The petitioner is Chapel Parking LLC.
All right, Mr. Chair and members of the commission. This is an ordinance that, this is a petition that came about from an odd situation in downtown. The petitioner is the owner of a block of land not too far from here, on the other side of Empire Street, at the corner of Waybosset and Empire. And half of that parcel was occupied by a 2-story parking structure, and the other half was occupied by surface parking. By the way, Chapel Parking LLC, I believe, is owned by Paolino Properties, or there's a connection between the two. Maybe Mr. Heeman can describe it better, but just so you understand who we're talking about, I consider this to be a parcel that's owned by Paolino Properties. And in our zoning ordinance, we have 2 regulations that pertain to this property. One is that surface parking lots are prohibited in downtown. The other one is that you can't demolish a structure without getting permission from the Downtown Design Review Committee. And then also, you can't demolish a structure unless you have a permitted use to replace it. And a parking lot is not a permitted use. So what happened here was the owner wanted to knock down this parking structure. And instead of coming to the Downtown Design Review Committee and filing an application for demolition, the owner went to the building official and got the building official to inspect the parking structure, made assertions that the parking structure was structurally unsound. And the building official agreed and ordered the structure demolished under the emergency powers of the building official. Frankly, there were some of us in the planning department that thought that this was not really an emergency, that the parking structure was not necessarily a hazard to public safety, but the building official has unilateral authority to make that decision, and he made that decision. Now, the problem, of course, is that when a structure comes down in downtown, as I mentioned, it has to be replaced by another structure that conforms to the ordinance. And a parking lot is not a structure that conforms to the ordinance. And the owner wishes to use the place, the land where this parking structure was for a parking lot. And we informed the owner that that was not permitted. So the owner, again, Mr. Heeman can correct me if I'm wrong, but the owner initiated legal action against the city. And ultimately there was an agreement entered into between the city and the owner, whereby this condition would be allowed on a temporary basis until such time as the ordinance could be amended to allow for this situation. So essentially what this amendment says, it's a one-off amendment addressing one piece of property in the city. And what it says is that if a parking structure is demolished by emergency order of the building official, that land can be used for a surface parking lot. So that's essentially what's in front of you. I feel that language is a little bit open to interpretation. I would be concerned that it might be used for a building that contains a parking structure, but also contains other types of uses. And I want to be clear that this shouldn't apply to any building that has parking within it. If somehow the owner could convince the building official to declare it structurally unsound in an emergency. We're trying to discourage parking lots in downtown as much as we can, surface parking lots. We want to see buildings. So the planning department is in favor of this, but with an amendment that folks, I think we have the wrong recommendation in front of us. If you want to just bear with me for a second. Maybe Mr. Heeman can elaborate on anything I had, and then I can come back to you with our specific recommendation.
Okay, Attorney Heeman, would you like to fill us in any more on this one?
Sure. I mean, they went and got they had issues with this garage. It's the one right outside where you're sitting, where it was essentially what I classified as a two-tier surface lot, where you kind of had the surface lot up on Way Bassett, and then underneath that structure was a lot below. And the lot was structurally deficient. The building official ordered the demo. And then there was confusion as to what was to be allowed and what wasn't. I wasn't involved in the very beginning, but had they known that they were going to have to put the parking lot back up or the parking structure back up, they may not have demolished it at all. They would have just left it there and not used it, because to replace the structure is an enormous amount of money, and they prefer to develop this land down the road into another building. They own both those lots contiguous. So we filed a declaratory judgment petition seeking a few things, including estoppel from being forced to put the structure back up. And then this was a resolution of that, would be to, rather than try to change the zone to a C3 or to have some broad sweeping change to allow for parking in the downtown zones, Attorney Lisa Dinnerman came up with this as a compromise. She wrote the amendment, not my office. But part of it was that if we were going to do this, Mr. Paolino had to bear the sole expense of going through this process, which is why we are the petitioner. And we didn't just have someone from the city council put it in to change it. So it does resolve that action. It wasn't a suit over damages or anything like that. Not looking for money from the city. It was just to clarify the different interpretations and the different interplays of the ordinance. So I think it doesn't just apply to this property. It would apply to other potential. I don't think there are very many that would qualify, but it's not just this specific address. It's anyone who's got a parking structure that's deemed structurally deficient and has to be taken down to an emergency order. rather than build a new garage, we can utilize the property and then hopefully develop it in the future into another structure.
But so this is saying that you would be allowed to keep it as a surface parking lot in perpetuity, giving you all the rights afforded to a by right surface parking lot. If your intent is to future development, I just wonder how this was crafted this way.
Well, the
Because I
future development
worry about
may or
that
may
same
not
thing that
come.
you just said. You know, Bob said this is specific to one address. I worry about what you just said at the end, which is there are many structures in downtown Providence that this could be applied to. And the intent of the ordinance that requires one to go to, number one, the Downtown Review Committee, and number two, that surface parking lots are prohibited, is to dissuade people from having surface parking lots.
But they'd have to be, I didn't say there were many, I said there are probably others. You know, for instance, the parking structure on Pine Street next to where McFadden's used to be. You know, that's one that, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but that's a structure. If that was deemed deficient and ordered demoed in an emergency circumstance, then it would apply to something like that. I don't think the intent would be that if, I think the Nightingale building has parking attached to it in some fashion, that if that became deficient, you'd knock down the apartment building and the commercial structures and then just leave it a parking lot, even though it used to be a parking lot. It's a limited circumstance where the building official deems the property has to be demoed. You don't then have to turn around and build a new parking lot.
Mr. Azar, do you have more to say?
Yeah, I just want to make it just I think Attorney Heeman's representation of the owner not being aware that surface parking is prohibited in downtown is probably inaccurate. I would go so far as to say it is inaccurate, but you know, I don't want to argue the point. What I would,
Joe Palino, right? Joe.
we're talking about Joe.
Yes,
Paleo.
yes, sir.
Yes.
One and the same.
Yes.
I'd be hard pressed to think that he doesn't, knowing as much real estate as he does in the area, I'd be hard pressed to think that he doesn't know what is allowed and not allowed.
In any
You
event,
remember the Gulf Station?
yes. In any event, my recommendation to you would be that you advise the council to approve this, but to insert language. We have this added language that's underlined at the end of the paragraph here. I would recommend that it be reworded to say, when a principal use parking structure is deemed unsafe. So in other words, I want to be clear that it's the principal use parking structure that we're talking about, not a parking structure that is within a larger building. And you know, just another point that I want to make is that buildings that are structurally unsound often get that way because they're not maintained properly. I'm not saying that it can't happen if something is damaged by you know, an earthquake or some other act of God, or if it was somehow not properly constructed to begin with. But those cases are extremely rare. So I just want to be very mindful of creating a slippery slope that might result in more demolition and more surface parking happening in downtown.
Okay, Attorney Heeman, do you have anything else before I ask the commissioners if they have any other questions?
No, I didn't. I think I had the other staff recommendation that Bob was looking at before, so I didn't have a chance to read that, but from his reading of it, I don't think that's something we would have a problem with the proposed change.
Okay. Commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicant before we open it up to public comment? And then we'll obviously converse amongst ourselves.
Yeah, I'm just interested if Attorney Heman could clarify why the demolition, why they went to the building authority and not to the downtown design review. Because it just seems like the demolition was asked for, and now it's asked, like, now we're changing a law to accommodate one project, which is kind of weird, right? Like,
So if you apply for a permit and you go to the building official and you require zoning approval or planning commission approval or DDRC approval, they won't issue you the permit. They had this structure looked at because they were having some structural issues with it and were concerned about it. When they had it looked at, it was determined that it had significant structural issues that would require a tremendous amount of money to spend on a very old parking lot. And they went to the building official and they sought his opinion on it, and he agreed and ordered an emergency demo. So they followed procedure, and the building official agreed with it and ordered that the structure be demolished. And that's what they did. Then a dispute became as to whether or not the structure needed to be replaced because of the use was parking to begin with. And then that led to a declaratory judgment being filed, which is when I came involved in the matter. And then this is part of a settlement of that. The other thing that we agreed to do was to, I believe it's this lot, the lot next to it, maybe one other lot, is part of the memorandum of agreement to resolve the case, is that these other lots that were parking lots that predated certain issues of stormwater and landscaping would also be addressed as well. So we agreed to do that, even though it wasn't the subject of this particular demolition. So the other lot next to it would also be brought up to comply with the landscaping requirements as well.
But maintaining it as a surface parking lot.
Yep.
Just bringing it up to groundwater and landscaping for a surface parking lot.
Right, because it predated those changes. So we agreed to bring that up to today's requirements.
so the entrance to downtown, we're gonna change the law to make sure that this can be that will allow this to be a parking lot for in perpetuity. The entrance to downtown property.
It was a parking lot. That's what.
Well,
the
now,
use was.
but now, yeah, well, all right. Yeah,
It
we don't,
was-
so,
It was a
what's the problem?
two-level
Okay.
parking structure that on Webassett Street was essentially a paved concrete surface lot on Webassett Street with parking underneath it along Chapel. So it's the same use as it was before, with no conceivable change to the experience that was there before. And it could have stayed that way if it hadn't been approved by the city to be demolished and granted one permit when it should have been granted a different permit. And this resolves a lawsuit over that issue. And this was the proposal of the city to do it this way, not the applicant. The applicant agreed to do it this way.
Fair enough. Other commissioners, before we open up to public comment, do you have any other questions for the applicant?
So in this case, were there other calls, that says in consultation with the on-site life safety officials, were there any other people involved in the inspection? And the other question, is there a structural report that we could look at?
To my knowledge, the answer is no to both questions. And I'm sorry if sorry to interrupt, Harry. I just want to finish the thought. As you can see from this section on emergency demolition, we actually do have a procedure that is short of we actually have 3 three ways to demolish a structure. One is to go to the Downtown Design Review Committee when there's, time and when there's a proposal. The interim is to convene this ad hoc committee of the Director of Inspection and Standards, the Fire Marshal, Planning Director, and so forth, to go out and take a look at it, to have a structural engineer look at it on, and then make a determination. And the third is the emergency demolition. This went right to emergency demolition. It skipped this sort of middle stage.
And I know that middle stage does happen because I've actually run into you
Yes.
down the street from me when that occurred on Westminster Street, not more than a year or two ago. Okay. Any other questions? All right. With that, we will hear the staff report one more time. Bob, do you want to just say that the verbiage that, because we don't have the right staff report here, just reiterate that verbiage one more time, and then we'll open up to public comment.
Yeah. So I'll say this. This was a the introduction of this amendment was something that was a deal that was brokered between the petitioner and the law department as a way to settle this declaratory judgment action. So, in the spirit of that agreement, the department is making this recommendation. So we are recommending that you advise the council to approve this with the change that says when a principal use parking structure is deemed unsafe, and then everything else stays the same. So that, to make it clear that this would apply only to principal use parking structures and not to any other sort of structure.
Okay, thank you. So with that, we will open it up to public comment. We'll open up to people in the room and virtually, if you are joining us via the interwebs, please raise your virtual hand or press *9 on your phone if you're calling in. Looks like we have a taker.
Can you speak over at the mic? Choyan, can you turn the mic on, please?
Thank you very much. Grant Bulgarian, citizen of the city of Providence. I just want to let you know that as someone who loves our city, I was disappointed when I saw the parking garage come down because we all like structured parking. Our comprehensive plan encourages structured parking, not just in downtown, but throughout the city. And so I expected a building to go up. No, instead we have a surface parking lot. And so I guess I have a couple of thoughts. One is that we need to ensure that our structured parking facilities are inspected a little more frequently than they are so that we don't ever run into this again. And I don't want to see any structured parking demolished that we already have that's in existence as we speak. And we have a number of them, and that's good. That's what we want. And we want more structured parking and less surface parking. And number two, it would seem that we could put a sunset provision on this particular request for an amendment to our zoning ordinance. And what would seem to be a reasonable time frame? I don't know, 2-3 years. And if depending on circumstances, we all agree that we're in a unique moment in the last century. It's been 100 years since we experienced something like this before, health-wise. And so, which has an impact on so much of our daily lives and our community lives. And so, 2 or 3 years would seem reasonable, and to revisit this. So that would be my suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone here in attendance or virtually who would like to comment on this agenda item? And seeing none, we will close the public comment of this item. I don't know about you all, but I take umbrage with this one. I don't know that. I think it flouts the intent of the guidelines that are in place and the processes that are in place. And I agree, maybe if we wanted to make some sort of recommendation that there should be a time frame on it, because I think a time frame for redevelopment is absolutely justified. But I don't want to give more credence to surface lots, demolishing structures to make surface lots and then keeping them surface lots in perpetuity. Did a little bit of research on this, and there's quite a bit of the comprehensive plan that speaks to what we're talking about here today. Specifically in the section on the built environment, section 4. And if we go down through the comprehensive plan, we'll start with objectives and strategies of the built environment. 4.2, objective BE1, design excellence is to develop and promote design standards for all new construction projects, both commercial and residential. Design that enhances the quality and character of the city, including preservation of historic structures and features, and waterfronts that incorporate provisions for new corridors and setbacks. So we did create a strategy to deal with downtown development. It's the Downtown Design Review Committee. That's there. Then I go down to BE2, sections C, identify community design standards and development issues throughout neighborhood planning processes and target specific concerns with appropriate controls and incentives. Seems like we have the controls there. Surface lots are prohibited in this area. And ensure that regulations reinforce high quality urban design, and in residential neighborhoods, ensure that zoning regulations reinforce traditional neighborhood design. This is the downtown area, and there are design standards in effect for it. And then I go down to BE3, and basically this entire section, A, B, D, E, F, G, but specifically, I'll read through them. A is identify and evaluate those areas of the city where increased building height and density can be accommodating, allowing for compatible transition to surrounding areas. Density is what we want in this area. B, develop regulations and incentives that encourage high quality mixed use development at heights and densities that support the city's diverse housing needs and transit alternatives. This is transit oriented development area of the city. I didn't put C in because that's incentivizing things, but D, evaluate and identify areas where increased height limits may be appropriate. E, encourage the redevelopment and reduction of surface parking lots. That's the one that I think is the most, and that's throughout the city. That's not just in downtown, but it's prohibited in this area. And throughout the city, we're trying to discourage redevelopment and reduction of surface parking lots. F, encourage life and vitality on city streets, particularly along main streets and corners in traditional squares. And G, promote transit-oriented development, including use of incentives to build close to public transit and or minimize parking spaces. Direct investment along commercial corridors to develop mixed-use centers to promote public transit throughout regulations and incentives, and tie parking requirements to the proximity to transit facilities. So those are my few brief areas where this conflicts directly with the comprehensive plan, and therefore I don't feel that we should give a positive recommendation on this to the city council to approve it. But I'm just starting the conversation. I want to hear what everyone else thinks.
Well, you started most effectively. And I think, like Bob, You mentioned that there were 3 types of demolition approval. What are the criteria for those 3 types?
So if this goes the sort of by the book way to the Downtown Design Review Committee, they have to find that there's a proposal for the site that complies with the design guidelines of the downtown district. So first they have to find that there's a proposal that complies with the regulations for the downtown district, the design regulations. Second, they have to find that the structure on the site is either unsound or somehow deficient. Either that or that the proposal for new construction, the benefits of the new construction outweigh the preservation of the existing structure. And that goes for an old building or an old parking structure or anything else. That's the sort of standard route, okay? For the other 2, where there's going to be some kind of a finding that there's a public safety hazard, that has to be the finding. The building official has unilateral authority to order a building demolished if it is a public safety hazard. The sort of intermediate step where there's an ad hoc committee that's convened is done when it seems like there's enough time to do a greater evaluation, where a structural engineer can look at it. It's not an imminent hazard, but it might still be dangerous, as opposed to the third option where, let's say there was a fire, a hurricane, an earthquake, or something like that, and the building official goes out and sees something that might be leaning into the street and about to fall on passersby. That would be considered a public safety hazard. So there's really two ways that you can demolish a building in downtown. One is if it's a public safety hazard declared immediately by the building official or through a slightly longer process. Or 2, if you have a new economic development proposal that's better than what's there.
So I haven't heard of any earthquakes or fires recently in this area, thank goodness.
I did hear
No,
that there was an earthquake in Rhode Island. It was like,
Yeah,
it's like 3 or 4 weeks
think
ago.
you're
It was like a 0.1
It was already down.
on the Richter scale, but I think it was already down here.
Good thing.
certainly, I think the demolition process has to be, criteria and everything has to be reviewed. But I think we all know what kind of went on. I agree with you, Michael. It's in contradistinction to the comp plan, and we should vote against it.
The city council still has the authority to pass this or deny it, but we're here to give a recommendation or advice to the city council in their capacity.
I just have a question, so if it wasn't like an act of God, so you say that a structure would get in this condition by neglect, right?
Demolition by neglect.
So when you have a structure that's neglected, is there a term for that? Like there's like it's in a nice neighborhood, but this particular structure is just not neglected. Will we call that blight?
Something
Maybe the
like that
PRA
that might meet the definition of blight under the Redevelopment Act.
So maybe the PRA should have went over there and did this inspection. Maybe, I mean, they might have been interested in this property.
Anyone else?
So sometimes when we issue negative recommendations, the city council does not always agree with us.
And
And so wondering if, it sounds like we're gonna issue a negative recommendation. Can we also say if they don't agree with us, though, they take what Bob's amended, adding a principal use? The way it is now is, if they don't agree with
problematic,
us and
yes.
they take what is written, it's really, really broad. So if they don't agree with, I'd like to give them another option that's a little bit more narrow.
I think I'd even like to add a time frame in there, a sunset of 2 to 3 years, Grant, I'm agreeing with you. Doesn't always happen, but
What about one or two?
Well, what about coming back?
on an annualized
and what-
basis.
Coming back for approval contingent upon. a
So,
sunset
but this,
agreement.
that would be changing all the wording because this is, that would be making it like a special use permit as opposed to in perpetuity, an allowed use by right.
Well, this is a change to the ordinance so that everybody. So does Chapel Parking own any other of these structures downtown? I know we're saying that there's not a lot of structures, but who owns the other structures?
There are numerous parking structures owned by numerous entities. This, I think Chapel Parking is probably a unique LLC for this piece of property that's on Chapel Street.
So this, if we give the positive recommendation, we're saying change the ordinance.
No, I think Nicole is saying, it, as a city council, you will have the right to do this. However, and if you choose to do this, please take Bob's advice on the verbiage.
Because it sounds to me like we're gonna issue a negative recommendation, but just sometimes when we've issued negative recommendations, the city council does not agree with us, which is 100% in their right and their prerogative. I'd like to, if they say, hey, city planning commission, we don't agree with you, I would like for them to know that, Bob, I wrote it on my paper, but Bob's
Principal use.
addition of when and then add the words principal use, parking structure, that makes this a lot tighter, in my opinion, and the applicant even agreed with adding the principal use. So mine is just a caveat
Just a
to
house
where I'm hearing the group going.
Are we able to draft, if we were to
Yeah, I can.
give a negative recommendation, where would we be able to make sure that we ensure that principal use is the verbiage that's.
Yes,
listed
yes,
there?
and I always show up in person at the ordinance committee to deliver your recommendations, and I can make sure that that's the case, but I would make that part of your motion.
And we recommend against,
Well, I think, yes,
as
that,
opposed to just not recommending.
I would highly, strongly recommend against it. And I'm hoping that a motion comes before us to do so based on the conflict with the comprehensive plan and our processes for review of such items. But the section BE 1B, section BE 2C and D, section BE 3A, B, D, specifically E, F, and G would be all of the areas in the comprehensive plan, just in one section that I briefly looked at of the built environment that it's in direct conflict with.
Would this be two motions then? One. to
No, I
against?
think you could make one motion. Yeah. You could, if you want, you could say a motion to deny based on the comprehensive plan sections that the chair just cited. However, if the council is inclined to approve, then the words principal use should be added before parking structure in the revised language of the ordinance.
And I think someone could just say so moved. All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a second. Let's go around. Noel,
Aye.
Nicole,
Aye.
Harry,
Aye.
Aye.
Manuel,
I will abstain just because I missed the proceedings.
understood? And I vote aye. So the motion to give a negative recommendation to the city council passes.
Yes.
All right. We'll move on to agenda item number 4, minor subdivision. This is a public hearing under Unified Development Review, so we'll be acting as the planning board and the zoning board. Just a quick time check at 6 o'clock. I do have a hard stop at about 6:45, so let's hope we can get through this agenda item before Nicole has to take over for me. But Nicole Verdi the vice chair will be taking over as acting chair once I step up, hopefully after this item. hopefully we get through this one. All right, so we are case number 4. Case number 22-019 UDR 5 Bell Street, and the applicant is Bell Street Chapel Trustees.
And commissioners, a quick introduction before we hear from the applicant. So this is a lot that measures about 31,900 square feet. And it's occupied by 2 buildings, a place of worship and an associated residence. Now, both of these structures front on Bell Street, and there is a large parking area at the rear that provides parking mainly for the place of worship. And what the applicant is proposing to do is to subdivide this lot into 2 lots of 25,700 square feet and about 6,240 square feet, with the residence being located on the smaller lot. Now, pursuant to a unified development review, they are seeking relief from the zoning ordinance, mainly from the limit on total rear yard impervious surface coverage for both lots, where the impervious surface coverage will be about 53% and 58% over the limit of 50% that's proposed in the zone. And this is mainly due to the presence of the parking area. So I guess the applicants are here and they can tell us more about the subdivision and the request for relief.
Okay, since this is UDR, can you both state your name, and we'll have can the court reporter please swear you in?
Sure. Brett Yabely, Chase Ruttenberg and Friedman on behalf of the applicant.
Edward Pimentel, I'm the land use consultant on the subdivision. The last name is spelled P as in Paul, I-M-E-N-T-E-L.
And since Ed is the only one giving testimony in this matter, he's the only one who needs to be sworn in.
Actually, Chairman, I do have another witness.
Oh, you do?
Who I think is on
Virtually?
by Zoom. Yes.
Okay.
Mike Raimondo of
Okay.
Situate Surveys.
Okay,
You can go. We'll do.
And do someone swear this over?
I do. Edward Pimentel.
Thank you, and we'll look for.
yeah, you're gonna have to bear with me just a second here, because
Thank you for letting us know before we start.
what was the name?
Mike Raimondo, it's the top.
Okay,
The
yeah,
top.
Raised hand.
I'm sorry, I
He keeps moving around.
promote.
There we go. Yeah, stop raising your hand and not raising it. When he raises it, he goes up. And
All right, well, let's see. what
There he
happens.
is. He's MR.
All right, sorry, folks. I need a second. That cursor is frozen for everybody's information. So bear with me. Why don't you guys, I'll work on him, and when,
Sure.
and when
we
it comes
can-
time to bring him in, then we can swear him in.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Azar. Thank you, Chairman and members of the commission and planning staff. Again, my name is Brett Yabely. I'm here on behalf of the applicant. Mr. Manjakar gave a very detailed summary of the project. The only thing I'd like to say before I call my witness is that Lot 2 under the project, which has some green shading there, is under purchase and sale agreement to be purchased as affordable housing for turning it into residential, single-family residential. It's currently the parish house for the chapel, but will be turned into single-family residential if once approved. Importantly, I just want to mention that the project does not bring any new construction or site development. The conditions of Lot 1 will not change, and the conditions of proposed Lot 2 will be improved significantly through the reduction of approximately 1,000 square feet of impervious space. The darker green shaded area that you see on the site plan before you is what the applicant is proposing to turn into rear yard space, while the lighter green shade is the existing grassy area space that exists now. So I'd like to call first witness, Mr. Pimentel. Mr. Pimentel, as many of you may know, is an urban planning professional with over 20 years of experience in planning and zoning. Mr. Pimentel is the zoning officer for the city of East Providence and currently a land use consultant. He's had various positions in various communities throughout Rhode Island and Massachusetts. Mr. Pimentel is accredited with the American Institute of Certified Planners, holds a BA in Urban Affairs from the University of Rhode Island, studied city planning at the University of Florida, and holds a Master's of Community Planning and Development also from the University of Rhode Island. At this time, I'd like to offer Mr. Pimentel as an expert in zoning and planning, and I'd like to offer his resume as an exhibit. I believe that I submitted the resumes in Mr. Pimentel's report, but I have hard copies if you'd prefer that I pass them around.
Yeah, you could pass them around. And commissioners, this was the report that was emailed to you
Mhm.
earlier this week.
And we'll accept Mr. Pimentel as an expert.
The packet includes Mr. Pimentel's resume, the report, as well as the neighborhood analysis that we'll discuss briefly.
You can proceed. I said we will accept Mr. Pimentel as an
Thank
expert.
you.
witness.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Pimentel, have you reviewed the relevant aspects of the comprehensive plan and zoning ordinance for the city of Providence?
I conducted a thorough investigation of the comprehensive plan, paying particular attention to the housing elements and the land use element.
And did you review the development review regulations for the city?
I did, because in addition to necessitating addressing the requisite burdens, we also had to address the standards for the granting of the subdivision pursuant to Rhode Island general law and their land development regulations.
And did you also review the applicant's application under Unified Development Review?
I did, and pursuant to that, I not only conducted a site inspection of the neighborhood, but then I followed that up with doing an in-depth neighborhood analysis, specifically for the purposes, although what's unique about this case is that we're not proposing any further development of the property, but it's my methodology to ensure that I can argue neighborhood compatibility and consistency with our actions.
And based on your review, have you formed an opinion as to this project?
I have.
And did you prepare a report?
I did.
At this time, I'd like to offer Mr. Pimentel's report as Exhibit B, also included in the packet that was circulated.
Thank you.
And does your report, Mr. Pimentel, include your analysis and conclusions on the items that you testified that you've reviewed?
It does.
Okay. Did you also perform a neighborhood analysis?
I have.
And at this time, I'd like to offer the neighborhood analysis that's also included in the packet as Exhibit C.
Thank you. Accepted.
Mr. Pimentel, did you analyze this project against the Unified Development Review Section 806 criteria?
I did.
And is it consistent with the comprehensive plan pursuant to 806.1?
It is.
Does it comply with the zoning ordinance per 806.2?
It does.
Is the project consistent with the purposes outlined in Section 101?
Yes, the purposes and intent for the ordinance. That is correct.
And can you just,
The intent and purposes for the ordinance.
and can you just briefly explain what you mean?
Sure. So the reason why I prepared a neighborhood analysis was because although we're not proposing any further development or intensification of the property, right now the house serves as the parish residence, but as a technicality now it's going to be defined as a single family residence in perpetuity. Under the RP district, pursuant to your regulations, because the lot will contain in excess of 6,000 square feet, we could have actually intensified the usage of this, or we could have sought to intensify it as a matter of right. That isn't our goal or our objective. Our goal and objective is to maintain the status quo. It's been used as a single family residence, albeit accessory to the parish, and now it'll be independent because we didn't want to intensify usage of the neighborhood. And that was my reason for doing the neighborhood analysis. And secondly, although as a technicality, we will need some dimensional relief pursuant to the subdivision, because right now the property in its entirety already exceeds coverages, it already exceeds the rear yard. It was our intent, because we do need to satisfy this body, that we are seeking the least relief necessary. And clearly, it's always a good thing through these redevelopment actions to cure some of these deficiencies, these past deficiencies. So what I did on page what I did on page 12 of 12 was, because we need to seek specific relief and not general relief, I wanted to illustrate to this body what the resulting conditions would be if we simply just asked to create these imaginary boundary lines. We're going from one parcel to two parcels, or with the introduction of these corrective conditions. That is a good thing, because number one, because we are establishing this now as a true single family, we want to have a true rear yard, a real grassed rear yard for the inhabitants that are going to be owning this piece of property. Number two, we want to get rid of some of this impervious coverage and create some real green space, reducing runoff. And as was spoken to pretty voluminously at the last application, it is the intent of the comprehensive plan to do away with unnecessary parking when you can. Either A, to realize further development, or B, to create some real green space, which in this case, you want a true yard to be associated with a single family residence. So having said that, without the corrections that are being proposed, and it's going to be approximately 1,000 square feet of green space, lot one would end up with an overall coverage of 57%. That is compliant. Lot two would end up with an overall coverage of 74%, which is woefully over the regulations. Lot one, the rear yard coverage would be 53%, just slightly over the excess of 3%. It's an existing condition. Lot two would end up with 73%, woefully deficient. What we're proposing is to A, end up having lot one still compliant with the overall, but reducing the rear yard down to 59% from 74. And with lot one, we're going to be reducing the 73 down to 58%. So with our corrective actions, we've eliminated a current deficiency that exists altogether, and we reduce another one considerably. So we end up with one variance, and we really reduce second variance. So the act of subdivision actually helps existing conditions and realize more conformity with the comprehensive plan and the zoning regulations. And that's why I felt very confident in saying that we could meet the respective burdens.
The respective what?
Burdens.
Okay.
And Mr. Pimentel, given your experience, you're familiar with the criteria for satisfying zoning relief in the city of Providence?
Yes.
Just
I'm sorry,
before
go ahead.
Mr. Pimentel summarizes in the report his findings and conclusions on the variance criteria, but I would ask that you summarize those briefly here for the commission.
Sure. So under section 806, under the required findings for the subdivision, 806.1 is consistency with the comprehensive plan. Objective H1, improve existing housing to revitalize, modernize, and preserve Providence's housing stock. Strategy A, encourage the retention and revitalization of the existing housing stock and discourage the demolition of housing units. Objective H3, housing for all, create new and preserve existing affordable workhouse. In fact, we're now taking existing workforce. We're actually taking a parish house, converting it to single family residence and making it affordable. Objective H5, housing design, promote high quality in the design. Once again, we're now taking existing hard surface, converting it to true green space. We're talking 1,000 square feet approximately. Section 806.2, compliance with the zoning ordinance. So I went through the intent and purposes under section 101. They're listed in the report. And then, as I've already detailed, we're actually reducing the dimensional nonconformities associated with this property pursuant to our subdivision actions. Section 806.3 and 806.4 have to do really more with the environmental and the engineering design. We have another expert to address that, but from a purely land use perspective, clearly you want to reduce hard surfaces, you want to create green space, you want to reduce quantity of runoff of our property, etc. And I have quotes taken right out of the comp plan. So for those respective standards. And then 806.5 is street access. Nothing is changing. All the existing curb cuts will remain. All the properties have more than sufficient access. And then getting into the unified, addressing the respective burdens. Like I noted, we are seeking the least relief necessary. In fact, we're reducing the quantity of dimensional nonconformities. This isn't to realize greater financial gain. In fact, by right, because of the current zoning, we could have intensified usage of the property as a matter of right. We're not asking to do that. And finally, a denial, which would result in beyond mere inconvenience. Absolutely, a denial would retain even a greater quantity of dimensional nonconformity, which is contrary to the ordinance and the comprehensive. So I feel very confident that we meet all the standards for the granting of the subdivision and all the burdens for the respective resulting relief.
And on the relief, is it your understanding that the hardship that the applicant is seeking relief from is not the result of any prior action on the part of the applicant?
That's correct. All of the current conditions long predate the ownership of this property.
And is the hardship due to the unique characteristics of the subject land or structure?
They are, and that is why we're helping to rectify some of them.
I see that Mr. Raimondo is with us now. I can obviously make Mr. Pimentel available for questions. I believe Mr. Raimondo has another proceeding this evening, so I'd like to catch him if he's able to stay with us for a few minutes before he has to go.
Very well. When you jump on, we're going to have you have the court reporter swear you in for the testimony you're going to give us. I think.
Please unmute Mr. Raimondo.
We can see your lips moving, but we can't hear you. You need to unmute yourself.
You need to press the microphone button in the lower left-hand corner.
How about now?
Now we can hear you. Wonderful.
Okay, I apologize for that. Okay. Yes, I do have another engagement, but it's in my hometown of Situate, so I think they'll wait for me.
Okay. Can you hear the court reporter? We're gonna have her swear you in right now.
Okay.
Why don't you use Manuel's microphone, maybe?
Okay,
Just
go over there. Could you raise your right hand, please? Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, state your name for the record and spell your last name, please.
My name is Angelo Michael Raimondi, R-A-I-M-O-N-D-I.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Raimondi. I just have a few questions for Mr. Raimondi. Mr. Raimondi is a professional land surveyor. He's been president of Situate Surveys and has worked there since 1980. He received his BS in civil engineering from Roger Williams. He's testified before numerous planning and zoning boards and commissions. And at this time, I'd like to offer Mr. Raimondo as an expert in surveying.
We'll accept him.
Thank you. Mr. Raimondo, your office prepared the site plan, is that correct?
Yes, yes, sir.
And can you see the display, the site plan that is displayed on the board?
Not very well, but I did bring a full-size copy. If you can indulge with me, I can assure you
Okay.
it's the same plan. If you don't mind, I look at it.
And, okay, does the site plan represent the most amount of pervious space that can be added to lot 2 while still allowing 2 parking spaces for residential use?
I couldn't find any more. I was actually very pleased with finding what we did find, so I'm happy
Okay.
with that.
So is that a yes to my question?
Yes,
Thank you. And will there be any negative environmental impacts from this application and proposal under section 806.3 of the regulations?
I would say to the contrary, there would be no negative, all positive.
Okay. And will the proposal result in the creation of lots such that physical constraints to development will exist on building on those lots according to the pertinent regulations and building standards?
With this subdivision, both the structures will meet this setbacks and area requirements and all that, if that's what you're asking.
Yes.
Yes,
And do the lots have adequate permanent and permanent physical access to a public street?
yes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Raimondo. So at this time, in the interest of time, I'm gonna say the applicant respectfully asks that the application be approved for the reasons stated and testified here to this evening.
Okay, thank you. Before we hear the staff report and open it up to public comment, do any of the commissioners have questions for the applicant?
So this driveway to the left of the residence is going to be maintained to create access to the real. So where are the parking spots for the residents?
Is that directed to me, sir?
Anyone that can answer.
I can actually answer it. Right behind the house in this area here. So there will be yard beyond, and then there will be space here. I estimate that there could be up to at least 2 and possibly 4 cars tandem and adjacent to each other.
Merino?
Yeah, I'd just like to jump on that and clarify. Can somebody walk us through the easements that are a part of this?
I think Mr. Yadley.
Sure. So you see a shaded area there to the left of the green. That driveway extends from Bell Street to what will be the back lot of Lot 1 to the designated parking area for the chapel. There is an egress on Grove Street for the chapel, but in negotiating the purchase and sale agreement that was signed, I believe in February of this year, the parties agreed that for safety concerns in terms of emergency vehicles accessing the Lot 1, that since we do have a shared driveway situation, that dual easements would be the most effective way of making sure that the parties have permanent access to the areas they need to get to. So, and there's a sliver, not sure if you can tell on this map, there's a sliver of the proposed Lot 2 of the driveway area that does extend slightly onto Lot 1. So there was an easement required for the benefit of Lot 2 to have access to the complete driveway. Does that help? Okay.
Noel, did you still have a question?
I do. How is the affordable unit secured over time? You said it's going to be an affordable unit. Is that in the?
It is in the deed, yes.
And what's the term?
30 years.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair. I'd just like to add that I worked with the applicant on this over time. When this was first proposed, there was a lot less, they were requesting much more relief for the house lot. And I felt that it didn't amount to the least relief necessary. I felt that there were opportunities to add more pervious surface to the lot. And I'd like to thank the applicant for spending the time and working with us to get to where it is.
That's good context. Thank you, Bob. We often only see the final draft and don't know the legwork that's put into some of these applications. They're usually served to us on a silver platter, and that helps to know what went into how the sausage is made. Yes. Any other questions for the applicant? Okay. With that, then, thank you very much. And we will hear the staff report. We'll open it up to public comment, and then we can deliberate as the commission.
And Commissioners, so as far as the variance goes, we would say that based on the applicant's testimony, that their testimony concurs with our staff report, where we find that the hardship that they seek is due to the unique characteristics of the property. It's not the result of the prior action of the applicant, given that the site was developed and developed this way. And as no changes are being proposed, the granting of this variance will not alter the character of the surrounding area or have a negative effect on the objectives of the comprehensive plan. This would be the least relief necessary to subdivide these buildings to have them on two separate lots. And finally, should you deny this request for relief, the hardship that they will suffer, in our opinion, would be more than a mere inconvenience, as it would prevent subdivision, which is encouraged based on the comprehensive plan and is permitted based on the zoning ordinance. So based on that, we would recommend that you approve the requested relief for impervious coverage as requested. And based on you granting that relief, we do find that the subdivision would be in conformance and consistent with the comprehensive plan. The subdivision would be in compliance with the zoning ordinance based on you granting this relief. We don't foresee a negative environmental impact. These would be considered buildable lots with no impediments to development, and each dwelling would be accessible to vehicles and pedestrians from Bell Street and Grove Street. So based on that, we would recommend that you approve the minor subdivision along with the relief, subject to the conditions that the validity of the preliminary plan be extended to 1 year from the date of recording of the approval letter, and that final plan approval be delegated to our DPD staff.
Thank you, Troyan. All right, with that, we will open it up to public comment. Is there anyone here in attendance who wish to speak on this matter? Or anyone in our virtual world who wishes to comment on this agenda item? See that? Just to confirm, we don't see any.
Yeah,
hands raised.
no hands raised.
No hands, *9 if you're calling in. We will close the public comment, seeing no one here to comment on this matter. Okay, commissioners. I think this one's pretty straightforward. I think they did a good job getting the maximum impervious area able.
I just have one question.
Yeah.
I don't know, the driveway there makes me feel uncomfortable. Like as let me, the area to the left of the building.
Oh, correct me if I'm wrong, that's already there, right?
The driveway is already there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But I mean, there's access to the parking lot from Grove Street, right?
there is.
So I'm just wondering, like, why create a lot with unnecessary, I mean, like, that passway next to a single family house isn't that kind of like, I don't know, it seems to me like a strange lot that is kind of, you could do something different here, right? And if they put the driveway on the left of the building, right? Yes, the lot one would still be not compliant, right? It would still have a low, but lot one would be complete, could be under the 50%. You would have you could use the driveway for the parking and have a full yard. I'm just wondering why this, like, how is this like not a strange lot?
Yeah, I can respond to that, and I shared the exact sentiments with the applicant. You know, in my opinion, it's not ideal if you own a single family house to have vehicles moving through what is your driveway to get to the church parking lot, especially when the church parking lot already has a curb cut. And the response back from the applicant was that this is what the church wanted. I agree, it's not ideal. There is nothing in zoning that prohibits people from connecting driveways in this manner. I think that you know, they did a pretty good job of getting to the point of getting very close to compliance with the zoning ordinance in a city where it's very common to see rear yards 100% paved. I feel like this is pretty good, even though it's not ideal. So you know, with that, I felt like this was a very good faith effort to accommodate the needs of the what the church sees as its needs and compliance with the ordinance.
Are the easements limited in time?
I don't believe so. I think they're recorded on the deed. They could be changed at you know, if there was an agreement between the parties, but I don't think there's any time limitation.
Any other thoughts on this one? Discussion? I think maybe the church is worried that they've had this condition for this long and they don't want their congregation to be confused. I don't know.
It is the Bell Street Chapel.
Yes.
I do feel like they made significant improvements, and the lots are. It does look to me like there were significant improvements made and the lots are in better condition, are being made in better condition than they are right now. So I feel really comfortable. It's a little weird in terms of, you know, having the drive through someone's backyard, but at the same time, I feel really comfortable with the record that the presentation that they've given today, the reports that have been given, the experts that have spoken. So I'm comfortable making a motion. Can I ask?
We're taking two separate votes.
Dimensional
The
first.
first would be for the zoning, the dimensional variance. And we'd want to cite the testimony and exhibits presented by the applicant along with the staff report with any motion that we make.
I'm happy to do that. I just want to make sure I'm not cutting off any discussion before
Sounds like
Okay.
motion could be made.
I will make a motion to approve the dimensional variance based on the staff report, the testimony that was presented today, as well as the testimony that's in the report.
Okay, so we have a motion by Nicole. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, Harry seconded. Let's go around and we'll vote on the dimensional variance. Noel?
Aye.
Nicole?
Aye.
Harry?
Aye.
Christian?
Aye.
Manuel?
Aye.
And I vote aye. And now we'll move on to the minor subdivision. again, referencing the testimony and the staff report, along with the conditions recommended in the staff report.
So moved.
Second,
We have a motion on the table. We'll go around again. Noel,
Aye.
Nicole,
aye.
Harry,
Aye.
Christian,
Aye.
Manuel,
Aye.
and I vote aye. Congratulations. Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, with that, and seeing the time, I propose that we take a quick break. We'll switch around the order of the chair, and I will see you all next week for our special meeting.
Yep, and we do have sandwiches that we can go grab for you folks.
So let's take a break until
15.
we want to take a 15-minute break.
Yeah, call it 6:50.
6:50, we will re-adjourn as Nicole as the acting chair.
I call this meeting to order. We're gonna go to the last agenda item. Major land development project, Unified Development Review, case number 22-022 UDR 35 Merino Street. The applicant is the Providence Public Buildings Authority.
Okay. This item, many of you will recognize this, came before you a couple of months ago. And it received master plan approval. This is a new pre-K to 5 school, city school, to be built on the site of an existing school, the so-called Spaziano Annex. And at the last meeting, you had granted certain variances that were necessary for this parcel. As you recall, the school sits on one parcel, and then across a public street is another parcel that is mostly going to be open space for use by the school and by the public. So they have advanced their plan, and they're here at the preliminary plan to talk about where things stand. And I think that's about all I have. The team is here and they can go forward. And am I correct that you're going to be bringing up the plans on your screen? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you see my name up there?
I'm gonna, yes. So I will promote you to a panelist, and then I'll move everything onto the screen over here.
And because it's Unified Development Review, we need to swear in
Yes.
witnesses. Maybe you want to do that
Well,
first?
actually, you're no longer considering variances anymore because they granted those at the master plan stage.
Oh,
So
okay.
I think UDR is over.
Okay,
So I don't think we need to do that.
never mind.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Chair, members of the commission. My name is Christopher Menahan. I'm here on behalf of the city of Providence. As was discussed for the preliminary plan stage of their major land development project, which will come up here momentarily. This is at 35 Merino Street. This was formerly the Spaziano Annex building. And the current plan is to demolish the building that is there and replace it with this brand new school. I'm joined tonight by Sean Martin, an engineer with Fuss and O'Neill, as well as Jeff Wazinski, a principal with Tecton, and also Joseph DeSanti of Downs Construction, the city's project manager. Joe is available to answer any questions if needed. And the city tonight is specifically seeking the approval of its application, and also seeking a waiver from section 506.2 of the regulations that requires the approvals of all state agencies to be submitted at the preliminary plan stage, and the city would like to respectfully request that waiver, and that those documents be submitted along with the final plan. And specifically, those are the DEM stormwater construction permit and the Narragansett Bay Commission stormwater connection permit. And since we were here last on this project, there have been updated design plans that have been submitted to the commission, as well as a stormwater management plan, a site maintenance plan, sediment and erosion control plan, lighting plan, including cut sheets and other materials as required by the commission, and as required from the master plan stage. And with that, I can, and I will turn it over to Sean Martin of Fuss and O'Neill.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. Sean Martin, Fuss and O'Neill, SHAWN, in Providence, Rhode Island. Just to remind the board members, members of the public, where the site's located. It's in the Silver Lake neighborhood, north of Plainfield Street, south of Hartford Avenue. There's an aerial overview, just so you know, the top of the sheet is pointing north. And in this image, you can see large impervious areas at the center of the aerial photograph. On the south lot, south of Laban Street, is the Spaziano Elementary School Annex. And the paved area to the north served as both a parking area and a playground, just to refresh your memory. There's a view of the annex building, again on the south side of Laban Street. And here's a view looking to the north at the parking lot and playground property. This is lot 111. This is lot 111, that view. This is an existing conditions plan and survey. It has a boundary survey and topographic survey of both parcels of land. As you may have seen in the images, or I can tell you that both parcels are almost entirely impervious. The lot that you saw as the playground and parking lot is entirely impervious. And the one that contains the school is approximately 98% or so impervious. So essentially both sites are impervious. I'm going to turn it over to Tecton Architects, Jeff here. Oops, I'm sorry. That's okay. And then we're going to come back and to talk about some of the site improvements after we get into the building, now that we have a little bit of a site context. Sure. Good evening. My name is Jeff Wyszynski. It's WYSZYNSKI. I'm a principal at Tecton Architects. I believe the floor plans were reviewed at the last meeting, but briefly, I'd like to outline the scope of the building. It's a pre-K to 5 building, approximately 79,447 square feet across four levels, 3 stories tall with a garden level. The floor plans that you see on this slide, on the left side is the garden floor level, the lower level of the building. North is directly up on the slide. On the left side is Merino, and on the top is Laban Street or Laban Street. In the garden level, essentially the uses are the gymnasium, cafeteria, and some support spaces. And then on the right side plan, that's the main level floor plan, you see the reddish color area, that's the media center and main entry. The green is the administration space, and the blue areas on the far right side and lower portion of the building are the kindergarten and pre-kindergarten. So the main level floor plan is houses basically admin in the public spaces in the media center. Next slide. Thank you. On the left side, again, same orientation. North is directly up. We continue with grades 1, 2, and 3. There's 4 classrooms for each grade level. The yellow shaded area is the connecting corridors. The darker orange colors are the specialized education for distribution throughout the building. On the right side is distributed throughout the building. Yep. On the right side is the 3rd floor level, and you can see it steps back from the east side of the property line. The white area there is a rooftop. And again, the blue shaded areas are grades 4 and 5, with the orange being the specialized education spaces spread throughout. This view is a aerial view showing the massing of the building. And again, you see the orientation. Left side is Laban, and on the right side is Merino. And the main entrance is kind of in the bottom middle of this view. And on the left side, upper left side, you can see how the building massing steps back from the residential property line. These are black and white exterior elevations. So since the last application, we've been developing and articulating the facades to break down the scale and mass, add durable materials, conventional materials, aesthetics that are found in the surrounding context. The next slides are a series of colored exterior elevations that better represent the materials that we're proposing: a brick, base, the reddish color there with cement board, the grays and the blues, and in the yellow for a little bit of pop of color at the main entries. So again, durable materials throughout all 4 facades of the building, wrapping the entire building so there's no back to the building. And then lastly, we updated the perspective view, and you can see the most exciting part about this is that we give green space back on the left side in the foreground there. You can see that across the street from Laban. And then you'll see the main entrance with highlighted with the kind of yellow colored canopy there and the media center beyond. So that gives you a flavor for the proposed architecture for the site. Thank you.
Realize this is a little bit difficult to read compared to the colored renderings you just saw. But these were included in the packets, and what they show is some of the details of the improvements, many of which haven't changed in substance. For example, the parking area to the south of the school building is off to your right. That's located on the church parking lot. There are 26 spaces that are proposed there. There are also 42 bicycle spaces that are proposed on the lot that's on the north side of Laban Street. And you can see crosswalks that will allow bicyclists to park their bikes and then walk across the street to the school, to the main entrance. And also for students, faculty, and others to go back and forth between both, the building and use the open space area for recess and events and things of that nature. There are extensive improvements to the pedestrian facilities on both Laban and Merino. There are new sidewalks and curbing being proposed. And that'll incorporate new signage and those sorts of features to provide not only wayfinding and traffic direction, but make it easier to access the school from the adjacent neighborhoods. We've incorporated, since the last plan, some parking on the east side of Merino, which is actually on the west side of that open space parcel. And that's intended to provide parking spaces for parent drop-off students in the morning and pick up in the afternoons.
Can you show me where that is?
Yes. Is that Bob? Is that Bob? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that right?
Yes, correct. I don't know if I have a pointer or not. I do. All right. Awesome. And I want to show you a plan that has a little bit more clarity. It's in the circulation plan. The commission had some questions last time about that. Here it is. So, last time when we talked about the intent for, how are we going to get students into and out of the school at various times during the day? You remember there are different grade levels here. They have different school hours. And that was one of the challenges. And after studying this and looking at several alternatives, we felt that this alternative, which includes closing off a small portion, about 200-foot section of Laban Street, made the most sense from a public safety perspective. It connects, as I said before, the open space parcel with the school parcel, bikers, pedestrians, and bus drop-off. So we felt would accommodate the best. And you can see in this image, the intent here is for buses only to have access to Laban during school hours. And it would follow this red arrow, that's the circulation pattern, as a one-way street. The buses would pull over to the right along the sidewalk, and students would be able to exit onto the sidewalk. And then this is Eastwood Street. That would also be one way during school hours heading towards the east. Now we presented at the last hearing that at the master plan that there are circulation restrictions during school hours today. They're signed that way. This proposal is an enhancement in that really there's no access that's allowed other than for emergency vehicles and things of that nature during school hours and buses, of course, as I stated. Wanted to leave it here for a second, just in case there are any questions. One of the benefits of this plan, as I had stated at the master plan, was that the open space lot is now truly going to feel like an open space lot. It's going to have significant canopy trees. It's going to be pervious, so it's covered in grass primarily. And all of that's really going to contribute to reducing the amount of stormwater runoff from this project site. In addition, there are 2 subsurface infiltration systems that are proposed to manage runoff from the property. One is located in the southwest corner of the site, which is right near the school, up in this upper right-hand corner. That's going to handle runoff from a small, it's actually one of the lower level areas. It's kind of like a patio, but it could be program space. So there's a small area that drains to this system and then allow water to infiltrate into the ground. The other is this larger subsurface system on the open space lot, and that receives runoff from the roof of the school. So the new Spaziano School, a significant portion of that roof runoff will actually go in across Laban Street and into a subsurface system, and then it'll infiltrate into the ground. But all these systems have been designed to meet or exceed both the city's stormwater ordinance and the DEM standards for redevelopment. So I know I testified to this effect before, but I would like to add that, the net result of this project will have a result of reducing runoff by about half from this property. It's due to the systems, but also the change in ground cover from impervious to pervious. So it'll have a significant benefit to water quality, reduce flooding downstream, and all of this goes to the Narragansett Bay Commission system, just so you're aware. Landscaping plan, as noted in the staff report and in the master plan application, the intent of this project was to provide all of the tree canopy required in the ordinance, which is represented on the plan. The one variation to that is most of this landscaping is provided on the open space lot. And you can see lots of trees that are proposed, canopy trees. There is one tree that's proposed on the school property right near the main entrance. It may or may not have been on the rendering you saw, but it is proposed in that corner of the school. Nothing to see on the utility plan. We did submit a lighting plan, and that conforms with the ordinance as well. I think that's it. One thing I wanted to also state is we talked about stormwater. The two state permits that we're asking for relief from have to do with the DM stormwater construction permit. This is because a subsurface system is proposed and it will put ground water into the ground. That's what triggers the permit. Had it not been for this proposal, Narragansett Bay Commission would be the sole permit granting authority to deal with the stormwater runoff. And secondly, Narragansett Bay Commission, their standards are zero runoff, if you're not aware, zero runoff from any part of the city into their system. That's what their standard is. What we do is we design these projects to comply with DEM and then exceed those requirements, because we know also that the Narragansett Bay Commission requires applicants to reduce the runoff to their facilities. A lot of this goes into the tunnel system before it gets to the treatment facility. So that's what their standard is. They don't want stormwater in the combined system if possible. And we feel that we've met that standard to the extent practicable, especially considering how this project And we submitted in the drainage report that was included with the application. We're infiltrating on the order of 7,000 cubic feet during a 100-year storm event. And as I said, at least 50% reduction in the rate of runoff. So for the smaller storms, the ones that we see fairly frequently throughout the year, there's effectively no runoff leaving the site compared to the pre-existing conditions. And we're asking for the relief so that, as stated at the prior hearing, so that the applicant can proceed with the building design, move forward with the certainty that this approval would provide, and knowing that the final plan approval is still contingent upon the state permits being received. So there is no loss of authority from this body, and we feel it's consistent with good planning practices and prior practice that we've done in this way with the city. So if you have any other questions about that, I'd be happy to answer them, or any other part of the presentation.
Does any of the commissioners have questions for the applicant?
Well, how many, this may not be, is there anybody here from the school department?
There is not tonight, no.
There wasn't
You
a
want
master
some
plan.
unfair questions?
We can answer, I think we can answer.
How many students are you planning to have at this facility for K-5? How many students?
I don't know.
No, if you don't know, then it's not fair. You guys are architects. So no. I just, all of my questions are for the school department. It's kind of amazing. What's the cost of this building, just for the front of it, roughly?
Excuse me.
How much is it gonna cost, would you project approximately to build this?
Would you like to add to that, Joe?
Can you state your name and your position for the record?
Good evening, Joe DeSanti, Downs Construction, Director of Project Management, OPM for the City of Providence. The question, you had a couple of questions?
I did. One was, I wondered how much this building costs. And I wondered how many students were going to be in it, in between grades K-5. The reason I'm asking you is that, we're on the City Plan Commission. We have a thick booklet that we go through, and I see information in there showing that K-5 is declining population. The population of the school, of the public schools is declining. And I'm kind of wondering, I guess the bottom line is why you're doing this.
Well, so there's a couple questions there.
Yeah.
So the first question is, I think it's approximately 600 students. That's why it's a K-5.
Okay.
Second part of the question is the overall project budget, including construction and soft cost, is approximately $32 million. As part of the process of going through and identifying projects for the City of Providence, one of the things we do is a utilization report to confirm that there will be adequate enrollment. An enrollment projection was done for this school specifically. And the projections over the 5-year period in the future show that there is a need for a pre-K through 5 in this area.
Well, I just, I'm sure there is. So there'll be approximately 600 students. I guess I'm wondering if it isn't really extravagant. That's just to put my cards on the table. I've driven by the old school. It's kind of a handsome old building, and I'm thinking, really? We have to demolish this and build a new school for $32 million for 600 kids with 80,000 square feet of floor space? It just boggles my mind. And I wonder if it's a good investment for Providence. And so that's the bottom line of where I'm coming from. I'd like someone to show me how this is going to be a good investment for Providence schools, for Providence's students. It just seems huge and not said enough. You got the gist.
So just to respond to some of your questions or concerns, this facility, the existing Spaziano Annex, is one of the highest FCI ratings in the city of Providence. FCI, Facility Condition Index, which means that the facility itself is in poor condition. And it would cost more money to renovate it than it would be to build a new school. So therefore, the decision was made, instead of investing into an existing structure that does not meet the 21st century learning needs of the children and the staff, is to invest and construct a new school that will be better programmed to fill the needs for the students, the staff, and the future needs of the city of Providence as well.
See, within the City Plan Commission report, we have a report on the facilities recommendations, which I'm sure you're familiar with, and Spaziano isn't even mentioned. And I wondered if it had another name, I guess. I don't see it mentioned at all.
It's referenced as the Spaziano Annex versus the Frank D. Spaziano. There are two Spaziano buildings.
I think at one point, not so long ago, Spaziano was also, or one of the Spazianos was also known as Laurel Avenue School. So you might find it referenced by a different name as well.
Okay.
I would also.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I would also like to just mention, we did approve this at master. So there are certain things that are grandfathered in from the master plan approval. Is there any other questions that commissioners have of the applicants?
Change their mind.
I guess on my end, and partially because in another life, I studied a lot of this and very familiar with it. I do commend the district for taking this action. I think the strategy of looking at newer buildings and possibly fewer. So to Harry's point, I don't necessarily think this means that we're building more or even building one-to-one. But I guess I'll take this opportunity to encourage the district to continue to look for opportunities to optimize utilization. But I do think the strategy of newer is good. And I'm pleased to see in the plan a set of strategies that really integrate 21st century practices, all of the small group rooms, all of that great stuff, double height spaces. I think there's some really great strategies in there. That aside, and going more to the subject at hand, I guess it seems like one of the things that we're considering is approval that delegates the landscaping plan to the city forester's approval, which I think we do and have done in the past. I guess I would encourage the team to look at the landscaping plan as part of the educational plan for the school. It feels like a field of grass surrounded by trees. And I think there's a real opportunity there to think about it as an educational space and to have the landscaping do all the things that it's doing well, but also be part of the educational environment. Not really a question, but comment.
I just want to thank the commissioner for pointing out Laurel Avenue, because I did look at this report, and there's Laurel Avenue and 210 students and no money to be expended, and just recommend modernization. So I don't know. I think I'm really concerned about whether this is really a wise expenditure. That's it, I guess. Seems awfully huge. Huge investment, $32 million.
Do any of the other commissioners have questions for the applicant? I think we will excuse you for a moment while we see, is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak?
Well, Madam Chair, typically we read the staff report first and
Okay.
then we can go to public comment. I see there are 3 folks who are online. One named Ray C has his hand raised. I assume that Ray C is not a member of your team.
Correct.
So that looks like a member of the public that we can get to after I read the staff report. Is that all right? Okay. All right, so as I mentioned previously, this matter has come before you. It has received master plan approval. Therefore, they do have a vested approval of this, and you know, all due respect to Commissioner Bilodeau's statements about this. Keep in mind that this is we need to look at this applicant as we would any other applicant that's filing under the zoning ordinance, and the requirement is that you make all the required findings, including zoning and so forth. And you have made findings relative to all of these criteria previously. As our staff report lays out, we recommend that you find consistency with the comprehensive plan and with the zoning ordinance because it complies with the standards of the zoning ordinance and it has received variances previously at master plan stage. We do not expect there to be any significant environmental impact. There are no physical constraints that impact development at this property. This is a buildable lot, and there is adequate physical street access from Merino and Laban streets. So we have the following recommendations. We recommend that you grant the waiver from submission of all state approvals, subject to the condition that the applicant submit the approvals to us at a later date. I just want to address this one for a second. I understand that this is a project that is on a relatively fast track. I believe that the city wants to see this project completed by September of next year. Is there someone who can nod to that effect? Yes, by June of next year. Okay. They have already submitted for a demolition permit. They submitted last month, and we had to tell them that they can't demolish the building while this proceeding is still going on. Under the zoning ordinance, demolition is not allowed until final plan has been approved. And the way this first condition is written, they wouldn't be able to get final plan approval until they get us all their state permits. I think they want to get final approval tomorrow, frankly, which means we send this on to building inspection. If we were to delay final approval until they got their state permits, that could be some time. So what I'm going to propose is that condition number 1 be modified to say that you should grant the waivers under the condition that the applicant submit the state approvals with building permits. That way we can issue final approval. They can advance with the demolition of the existing building and they can stay on their schedule to get this building constructed by June. Number 2, the landscaping plan shall be subject to the city forester's approval. This is a condition that's not necessarily required by the zoning ordinance. They've submitted a plan that does conform. We like to get the city forester's approval since these, just because sometimes he can be of service when it comes to selecting certain trees that'll do well with the city. If you like, you could add a condition, as Mr. Cordero suggested, to evaluate the landscaping as an opportunity for educational purposes. I would leave that up to you if you want to add that. Number 3, the CPC should approve the preliminary plan, finding it to be in conformance with the zoning ordinance and the comprehensive plan. And finally, final plan approval should be delegated to DPD staff. That's it.
Public comment?
Yes. So we do have a Ray. I'm going to promote Ray to a panelist. And when you come in, please unmute and turn your camera on. I'm going to,
Stop sharing.
yeah, if you wouldn't mind stopping your sharing, Sean. Okay, Ray, if you could turn on your camera, if you want, or at least talk and make sure we can hear you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Myra C. Raymond is next to me. We live on Merino Street, directly across the street.
Myra, just a minute, please. Just a minute. We have a stenographer here that has a question for you.
Okay.
Could you just state your full name for the record?
State your full name for the record was the request by the stenographer.
First name is Myra, M-A-Y-R-A. Last name is Curran, C-U-R-R-A-N.
You can proceed.
Thank you.
Okay, so as I said, I live on Merino Street, directly across the street from the school. I've been in the neighborhood for over 20 years. My concern is, and I've talked to many Igliozzi and many others, that during when school lets out, the street on both sides is so packed that I cannot get into my own driveway. My husband had a heart attack not a few years ago, and fire trucks couldn't come down the street. So is it possible to make Merino Street a one-way during, when school is letting out? As I believe you said, Laban was going to be,
What tends to happen with two-way traffic with school either getting in or getting out is people are trying to go in both directions with school buses, and I've seen almost fights break out with nobody would back up, and it just becomes a complete nightmare. It truly does. Do you have anything else to add, Mom?
No, that's pretty much it. I mean, there's a lot of other concerns, but right now that's my number one priority. I want to be able to come down Merino Street at any time. I want to be able to pull into my driveway without, my driveway being blocked or being told to wait. Yeah, that's.
I do have one quick question about this open space. Knowing the kids around here, it's going to be a big hangout spot. Is there going to be night lighting in there? Because I can see that becoming an issue quickly. That's all for me.
I'm going to follow up with the applicants based on what you just mentioned. So Is there anything else that you want to make the commission aware of?
No, that's pretty much it for now. I just hope that what I had to say is really taken in serious and into consideration, because I'm tired of talking for all these years, but no one's listening. No one is doing anything about it. And I would hate to see something major happen to get someone's attention.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate your testimony and your public comment tonight.
Good night.
Thank you. Could I ask, would it be possible to mention, I saw in the packet that there was a traffic technical memorandum, and it looks like there's some discussion in there about congestion. And so just wondering if you can respond to the comments about congestion, especially at school when school lets out. And then also, I noticed there was a lighting plan, and so the question was about lighting in the evening.
Yep.
We just respond to both of those.
We'll do the
comments.
lighting first. There is no lighting proposed on the open space parcel, other than street lighting on the nearby streets that's existing. But we agree, when we looked at, I'm gonna use the term she used since she's lived there for 20 years, Merino, that it was very narrow. And we thought, remember in the initial proposal, one of the ideas was to stack buses on Merino as they entered into Laban. We had some concerns with doing that specifically because of what was described by the neighbor. So that was the reason for trying to make it easier for buses to get off of Merino and onto Laban in a more unrestricted fashion for the buses, not having to compete with the space for with cars and drop-offs and things like that. And the other was, since the buses would be taking right-hand turns into Laban Street, we decided to move the parent drop-off, or let's call it student drop-off, further to the north along Merino to get them away from that intersection. So, and if you notice on the plan, the parking is provided offset from the existing right-of-way curb line. So the curb line's expanded, so those vehicles can be parked outside of the traveled way and maintain that width through Merino. I think the only other way to respond is that some enforcement about parking and pickup and drop off would have to be implemented. I mean, this would be a new school proposal. The traffic patterns would be different. People would have to get used to them. So in addition to what we can say is the crossing guards and as you heard from the school department last time, there would be people out there to get students safely into the building, into and out of, I should say, but also to educate the people that are picking up and dropping off. I think that's one element. But the other is that we'd have to have some sort of enforcement element. And this doesn't mean the heavy-handed sort. It's more of an educational thing that folks are aware. They get used to reading the signage that's going to be placed out there and allows them to understand the purpose of it, and that they can't block. You know, one of our concerns too is that folks would park in front of these driveways. We understand there's driveways right across the street. We don't want people parking over there and blocking those driveways. It sounds like Mrs. Curran perhaps maybe called the city to ask for that enforcement. Like these folks are blocking the driveways and hasn't seen any effect. I can just say that we were sensitive to it and coming up with a circulation plan when we studied it. So we are definitely sensitive and trying to minimize the impacts, and in fact, trying to mitigate what might be happening today or was happening.
Thank you, that's helpful. Is there anyone else on either in person or online that from the public that wants to speak or has their hand raised? Or
There is not. Nobody else.
okay, I think we can close the public comment. Before we let the applicants go, is there any other questions that the commissioners have based on what we just heard?
I guess just a quick follow-up on the question of parking. I mean, I guess in continuing to think about this issue, I wonder, since we have control of that site, whether, and again, I'm not a traffic engineer, but I wonder if there's other opportunities to carve out kind of drop-off areas, like on Eastwood, maybe, like just providing a kind of queue area so that we can kind of respect the intent of minimizing the impact by kind of absorbing it on the site. And then I guess I say that on the one hand, and then on the other hand, it's hard to see in the plan that I'm looking at now, but I also want to be careful about sidewalk continuity, which I'm sure you're keeping in mind. But you know, these are substantial cuts that we're making, but we just want to make sure that the travel path for pedestrians and youth in particular is clear and continuous.
Yes, and the point's well taken. Eastwood was one of the streets that I had mentioned previously as kind of a logical one, especially since it's being proposed as a one-way during the school hours. And I don't know, would it be okay to share my screen, Bob, or?
Yep.
Okay. You can see in this area, off to the left of your screen, on the left of the image, that's Eastwood. Along Eastwood at the far end of that open space, there's a possibility for pickup. I think what the school department stated last time is that these intersections would have crossing guards all along. And this sidewalk that's being proposed is a new sidewalk. And the intent was, since we're pushing the curb line towards the open space to kind of make sure that those vehicles are not obstructing the flow of traffic, that we'd still maintain the connectivity to Eastwood, and there's a crossing over here across Eastwood and Merino. So I don't know if that's a more of a practical approach or it's a policy approach that could be implemented by the school. An instruction to parents to pick up on, you know, the designated spots on Merino as they're indicated, and then also Eastwood. I think it's a good recommendation, because, you know, that often happens where you can put signs and things like that, but you need people to kind of manage it, and you need education too. So I think that's something that, can't speak for the school, but we'd happy to bring that to the school as something we can incorporate into the final plan.
Can I answer your question? Any other questions for the applicants before we let them go? All right, thank you very much. Close public comment. Discussion. What do folks think? You know how Harry feels.
Well, yeah, thank you. It's all, I relish the fact that I've made myself clear.
We do need 4 votes to approve this.
I'll do my best to frustrate them.
As someone that put two older kids through school, I have 2 elementary school kids now, someone who teaches in the school every day. You know, COVID was kind of a frightening thing, right? Like, even I teach at a independent school, good facilities. We don't have we have one of those things in every room. We don't really have great air circulation. And I know, as someone who came through private public schools, my elementary school is no longer standing, it's an empty lot. Actually, the plan came up here before to replace that school with apartment buildings recently. In January, I missed it. My middle school is in such bad shape, it's on that list. And even classical, which is the jewel of the city, is a terrible facility that needs a lot of renovation. So as a parent of school-age children and as a teacher, I mean, I can't say enough about getting these new buildings to keep people safe and warm and dry, and because you can't really do learning if you don't have those basic human needs. So I'm all for this. I love it. I love the plan. I think you guys are doing a great job. And kids can wait for the bus on the green and on the grass. I mean, wait for their parents to pick them up on the grass instead of on the street. I think it's a great plan. I love it.
To address the question of cost, I offer Commissioner Bilodeau the assurance that the cost controls on this are significant. And if the team can pull off this project at that price, the city should take it and run. I'll leave it at that.
I think of the bridge. That was only, what, 200, 300% over.
I watched the school get built in a year, a couple years ago. I saw it, so I know it can be done. So let's get this thing approved and running, up and running.
So I think we need a motion to grant the preliminary plan approval, but we need to do the waiver first, or can we do it all as one?
Yeah, I recommend you grant the waiver first, and again, my recommendation is you grant the waiver such that the state approvals would be submitted with building permits.
So moved.
Okay, let's go around the room. Manuel?
Aye.
Noel?
Aye.
Harry?
Nay.
Chris?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Motion passes. And next
would be approval of the preliminary plan, finding it in conformance with the comprehensive plan and the zoning ordinance, subject to the landscaping plan being approved by the city forester, and final plan delegated to DPD staff.
So moved.
there's a second. Okay, let's go around. Manuel?
Aye.
Noel?
Aye.
Harry?
Nay.
Chris?
Aye.
I also vote aye. It passes. Before we adjourn, we have an announcement from our esteemed legal counsel. So without further ado, I will turn the mic over.
Yeah, so some of you don't know this, but I've been doing this for about 10 years now. And I have an opportunity to go to a law firm which will heavily conflict with this board. So I did actually give my notice to Jeff Dana. And I do want to say that this is one of the most professional boards I've worked with. I've appeared before. You all are so professional and well-prepared, and it's really been enjoyable to work with all of you.
All of them?
All of you. And I love the different, and I love the different perspectives on everything. I do want to say one thing though. I am going to take credit for, and this I think is the most important thing I'm going to take credit for. So moved. Right? Because at the beginning of this, you would repeat everything that was said in the recommendation and, paraphrase. So anyway, but yeah, I do have mixed feelings because I do really enjoy representing all of you and all the people before you. But yeah, so that's it. So I will be here next week. And that may be my last meeting. I told Bob I'm not going to leave them hanging if they don't get somebody for you, but yeah, so.
Thank you for your public service.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
But the other very important thing you did was to tell us that we had to state statute and verse and everything out of the comp plan. So if you had to go represent us before any other board,
Yeah.
you could actually state that this was-
Defend your decisions, yeah. And that's, when there is a denial, that's all of the boards that I represent. It's even more important because the staff does I don't want to say does your job for you, but they give you the bullets of what you need to say. But if you're going to deny something and they don't agree, it's really important to get those findings on the record, so.
You lose your parking space.
Yeah.
Well, if I may, I just want to personally thank Kelly. You've been an outstanding counsel to this board, and we've had many conversations about all sorts of things, and so I appreciate your the professional relationship, but also thank you for always being available just to talk about what we do and how we do it.
Yeah.
So I appreciate it.
I also want to thank you because I felt like I always felt really confident that we had you in our corner. And that when we were making decisions that were sometimes difficult or we knew were going to be appealed, like we had Kelly.
Yeah.
And so
Thank
you're
you.
going to be really, really missed.
Oh, thank you. But you'll see me in about a year, I think.
A year and a day.
Yeah.
That's statute of limitation.
I want to thank you for your kind words. I'm so moved.
Yeah. That was great.
And with that, motion to adjourn,
Second.
unanimous.
Have
Have a good night.
About things.
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll be doing that, I'm sure. Okay.